Okay, we'll start with this. Set to go down in May on the undercard of Walker versus Eggington. Unbeaten up-and-comer Tia May Ayton will be taking on experienced veteran Stevie Levy. It's been a long time since Stevie Levy would have fought on a Matchroom show. She's been keeping busy over the years, flying largely under the radar, currently on a 2-fight winning streak. She's going to be facing Tia May Ayton, the unbeaten up-and-comer, the child prodigy, sporting an unblemished record of 5 wins with no losses and no draws, 4 knockouts. Last in action earlier this year in February.
Last month.
She was able to win a points decision against Catherine Ramos over 8 rounds. We know that most of Tia May Ayton's fights so far, they don't go the distance, but this one did, and that's actually a good thing that she was able to bank 8 productive, dominant rounds. She'll be facing Stevie Levy. Sports a professional record of 15 wins with 4 losses and no draws, 2 recorded knockouts, having never been knocked out in 19 professional bouts, which I'd say is impressive.
Yeah, Stevie's been in there with some good fighters, and she's a tough broad.
Last in action in November of last year, opposite the ring, Antonella Molina, who she stopped in the 4th round of a contest scheduled for 6.
She was busy in the previous year. She fought 4 times. Once in March, again in May, then in September, and finally in November. It's not too shabby for a fighter that's not with a major promotional outfit, being able to bank that many fights in the calendar year.
That many rounds.
So I'm going to assume that this is a bantamweight contest, as that is where Tia Ayton campaigns. Still a ways out from fighting for a world title, though perhaps not a regional one, say Commonwealth title, EBU title.
She's not far off from fighting for one of those.
At the very least, I expect Tia Ayton to win a points decision, even though she favors going for the knockout, and she said that herself, though we all know by now what the risk of that is, and looking for the knockout, you run the risk of being knocked out, but that is her temperament, and she likes to finish strong. Stevie Levy's never been knocked out, and she's been in there with some quality operators, a former champion and an aggressive customer in Jorgelina Guanini, Laura Grizeb, Tycee Gallagher.
They didn't stop her, so that if Tia May Ayton, who is younger now than they were when they fought Stevie, goes in there and is the first to do it, I would call that a statement win, a strong one. In what is a very deep division, it would send a message to the other contenders and the champions that are there. 118 is a deep weight class. You have Shernika Johnson, Dina Thorsland, Crystal Rosado, Sharita Metcalf,
Mio Yoshida,
former champion Ebony Bridges, former champion Shannon Courtenay.
There is a lot going on at 118. MVP has actually harvested a good number of the recognizable names at 118, while Tia is promoted by Matchroom.
She will be returning to action in May in what will be her second fight of this calendar year. I expect Tia to win, and I expect her to fight 3 to 4 times by the time that this calendar year ends. Tia on points would have to be the conservative pick, though I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up being the first woman to stop Stevie Levy.
We'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, league or 4 belts? Boxing's champions face a defining choice.
The ongoing stir in reference to the Muhammad Ali Boxing Revival Act passing the United States House of Representatives could soon leave boxing's champions facing a defining choice: remain within the traditional 4-belt system or pursue opportunities in emerging league-style structures. For the first time, the sport's biggest stars could find themselves weighing whether traditional world titles will still carry the same value in the new structure. Among the proposed reforms is a provision requiring sanctioning bodies to recognize only 1 world champion per weight class, while tightening restrictions around interim titles. If the legislation ultimately becomes law, the change could have immediate consequences for how championships are structured throughout the sport.
I consider this another giveaway that the people who are against the Muhammad Ali Revival Act didn't bother to read what's in there, because if they had, why would they be against restrictions on interim titles? Why would that be a bad thing?
1 champion per weight class per sanctioning body. Why would that be a bad thing?
Isn't that what boxing fans have been complaining about for years? that there are too many alphabet titles. The organization most directly affected could be the WBA, which has operated for years with more than one champion in the same division. Under the WBA structure, a super champion sits above a secondary, regular champion, effectively creating two world champions under the same banner, not even counting WBA Gold champions and interim champions.
This system has drawn criticism from fans and fighters for more than a decade, with many arguing that it inflates the number of belts and complicates championship lineages.
Now, why does the WBA do this? So they can collect that many more sanctioning fees from that many more fighters. It's all about lining their own pockets.
The Ali Act reforms could intensify the debate by requiring sanctioning organizations operating within the United States to recognize a single champion in each division. The pressure on boxing's existing title structure is not purely theoretical. A recent ruling by the International Boxing Federation, the IBF, has already shown how sanctioning bodies may respond when alternative championship systems enter the picture. The IBF stripped Jai Opataya of its cruiserweight title after his bout with Brendan Glanton was promoted as being contested for the Zuffa World Cruiserweight Championship. The Federation had initially agreed to sanction the fight under the condition that any Zuffa belt would be treated as only a ceremonial trophy rather than a rival title. When the event was publicly promoted as a world title fight, the IBF withdrew its sanction and forced Rule 5H, which automatically vacates a champion's title if they compete in an unsanctioned bout within the weight limit. The decision immediately costed Jai Opataya the belt he carried into the contest and created the first clear precedent for how sanctioning bodies may react when fighters participate in bouts built around alternative championship structures.
Yeah, it's the sanctioning body's way of pouting and throwing a tantrum.
The situation escalates the growing tension between boxing's traditional sanctioning body system and the league-style concepts now emerging in the sport. The Ali Revival Act also introduces the possibility of UBOs, which would operate alongside existing sanctioning bodies while staging events under their own championship systems. That development could force the major sanctioning bodies to rethink their strategies if top fighters begin competing more frequently under alternative formats. Zuffa could eventually face a situation where some sanctioning bodies distance themselves from the promotion entirely. At the same time, others may look to strengthen relationships with rival structures already forming around the sport. The WBA has already explored closer ties with the IBA in recent times, suggesting the governing bodies are preparing for an alternative landscape. The IBA Pro format of the body formerly known as AIBA in the amateur ranks already has its own belts.
Yeah, they do, but they don't do shows in the United States, and thus they're not subject to any changes or amendments to the Ali Act.
Whatever direction a sport ultimately takes, one reality is clear. If the biggest stars increasingly compete outside the traditional title system, the four major sanctioning bodies will have to cope with fewer championship bouts and fewer sanctioning fees, i.e., they're hitting them in the pocket, where it hurts the most.
Okay, but how is that a bad thing? The boxing fans themselves have been complaining about the sanctioning body's business practices for years now, that if there's an alternative emerging, why would that be a bad thing?
It's because they're misguided. That's one reason. Another is they just don't like Dana White, and Dana White has fast become the face of Zuffa boxing. Before and after a show, he's the one on the podium, he's the one fielding the questions, and because they don't like him, they don't like Zuffa.
That's number 2. What's number 3? Some of the people in opposition of Zuffa and in opposition of the Ali Revival Act are those most affected by it, namely the sanctioning bodies. You think they like it, that they won't be able to mass produce belts anymore?
Of course they're not going to like that. Of course they're not going to like the idea that they're about to get less sanctioning fees, because the fighters now have an alternative. They didn't have a choice before, but they do now. Sanctioning fees have long been accepted as part of boxing's four-belt structure, especially when fighters are chasing recognized world titles or undisputed status. That balance may now be starting to shift. Recent pushback from Terence Crawford and Shakur Stevenson over paying sanctioning fees has brought the issue further into the open, highlighting a frustration once discussed far less publicly. Before the arrival of Zuffa boxing and the latest talk of league-style structures, that kind of resistance felt more unusual at the top level. Now, with purses rising in the Saudi-backed era, more fighters may begin asking whether the cost of chasing traditional belts still makes financial sense. That is where the Ali Revival Act could become significant beyond the politics of Congress. If UBOs are eventually allowed to operate alongside the existing sanctioning bodies, fighters who do not want to give up a slice of their purse for belt fees could have another route available to them for sanctioning bodies. That creates a serious long-term question. The more top stars who choose league boxing over the traditional four-belt path,
The less money the sanctioning bodies get.
the fewer major title fights remain inside the existing system. Fewer title fights would also mean fewer sanctioning fees. That is not just a title issue, it is a business issue that could reshape how boxing's governing bodies operate.
But you know what else that means? That means that the fighters get to keep more of their own money. So I'll ask again, why would that be a bad thing? For those opponents of Zuffa boxing entering into the boxing space or the Muhammad Ali Revival Act, why would it be a bad thing that the fighters get to keep more of their own money instead of giving it away to the sanctioning bodies?
Did you schmucks actually bother to read what the Muhammad Ali Revival Act entails? Because it doesn't look like you did.
You know that under Zuffa boxing and their league structure, the fighters no longer have to pay out money out of their own pocket for training camp fees and sanctioning fees, so they get to keep more of it. That if the fighters are what you're so concerned about,
I don't think they care about the fighters as much as they let on. I think it's just virtue signaling to service an agenda. Now, I'm not saying that a league structure is for everybody. It's certainly not for guys like Canelo Alvarez and Shakur Stevenson, those kinds of fighters, but for those B and C and D tier fighters. For them, it might actually be beneficial that they're seeing more of their own money from their own fight purse.
this is what veteran boxing scribe Dan Raphael tried to highlight on his own Twitter page yesterday.
Talking to a guy who goes by the name Big Head 510, who said, to simplify it, it's good for Dana White and Turkey, and it's bad for the boxers, the Muhammad Ali Revival Act. To which Dan responded, absolute nonsense. It is not at all black and white. Some fighters will dramatically benefit from being in a UBO. It won't be right for some fighters, and the more established promoters say they will continue to operate in the traditional manner with the sanctioning bodies. Furthermore, it will make it illegal in the United States for there to be interim titles, except in specific scenarios, which is good. In the end, the public will decide which version of the setup for boxing they like. To say it's the end of the world or that it's great is absurd. Like anything, there will be degrees of both.
The nuance of it is lost on the mouth breathers that think they know what they're talking about when all they're really doing is going off of emotion. Because you don't like Dana,
You don't like Zuffa, and you don't like the Revival Act, even if you don't know what the Revival Act is, or what it entails.
or how a lot of fighters could benefit from it. Yet it's the fighters you claim to care so much about. It's all bullshit. In a word, a lot of the people you've seen talking about this don't know what the fuck they're talking about. This isn't a bad thing for the boxers, it's just an option at the same time. This doesn't mean that Zuffa boxing is going to take over the sport. It doesn't mean that either. The nuance of it is lost on them because they're stupid.
The only ones I can say objectively this is bad for is the sanctioning bodies, as they won't get to run around doing whatever they want to do like they used to. But why would that be a bad thing when we've been criticizing the sanctioning bodies for years now? It's about time that boxing in America got a bit more regulation.
Yeah, maybe this is a bad thing for them, but it's not a bad thing for us. This would satisfy what a lot of us had been wanting.
Speaking of America and Americans, American heavyweight Jared Anderson now joins the home of the heavyweights. The rumors were true, and he's signed a co-promotional deal to box under Queensberry. While it has been on the cards, today Queensbury announced that they will co-promote American heavyweight Jared Anderson with Top Rank. Welcome to the home of the heavyweights. We're at a post on Queensbury's social media channels. Big fight news incoming. Anderson is ranked number 6 by the WBO, and the 6'4", 18-1, 15 knockouts contender suffered his first defeat in August of 2024 when he lost to Martin Vicoli in 5 rounds, an outcome that I called based on how Jared Anderson had been looking at the time and his half-hearted commitment to to the sport of boxing. I knew that when he gets in there with Martin, it's going to be all bad.
And it was.
Now, Anderson's last bout was in February of last year, outscoring the 12-3-1 Marios Colias over 10 rounds in the theater at Madison Square Garden. I'm thrilled to add Jared to our heavyweight ranks, said promoter Frank Warren. Queensbury is the home of the heavyweights, and the perfect platform for him to stay active and feature in the biggest fights.
So does this herald Top Rank's official withdrawal from the heavyweight division, since they don't seem to have much going on there?
Not necessarily, because they still have Richard Torres.
To where shipping Jared Anderson off to Queensbury to let them deal with him is tantamount to shipping him off to boarding school.
Yeah, he's your fucking problem now.
Aram and our friends at Top Rank. Bringing a leading American heavyweight into the mix only adds to the strength and excitement of our stable on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. Jared's next fight will take place on British soil, with further details to be announced shortly. Warren's stable of heavyweights includes Moses Italma, Lawrence Okoli, Derek Chisoria, Zile Zhang, Tony Yoka, Fabio Vortley, Agit Kabayel, David Adilier, Joe Joyce, and Daniel Dubois.
Of those aforementioned names, given how Jared Anderson has been looking and that he's been out of action for such a long time, I would only trust him to beat maybe one or two of those guys. Maybe David Adilier, maybe Tony Yoka. Maybe Joe Joyce. What Jared Anderson has been struggling with the last 2 to 3 years, I want to say, is a ticker problem that as soon as the going got hard, the going got tough.
He wanted to get going. He's not committed to the sport, or he hasn't been.
He's got a ticker problem. And this profession, unlike so many others, is not one you can perform half-hearted with any hope of getting somewhere or amounting to something. You have to be all in. It's a jealous sport. If Top Rank is now shipping him off to Queensbury, underneath it all, it's because they feel they've done all they can do for this fighter. Let him be somebody else's problem now. He goes over there and Frank picks him up. It says meat.
A familiar face for his British and international heavyweights to perhaps pounce on.
Otherwise, what the fuck does Frank need from a Jared Anderson given the stable that he already has? What is he gonna use him for, if not a punching bag? Spite of these inconvenient truths, this doesn't have to be a bad thing for Jared Anderson, because Queensbury Promotions really is the home of the heavyweights. You can turn this into an opportunity if you've got your head on straight, if you make the most of it.
The opportunity to endear yourself to the British boxing fans who boast a more fertile environment for boxing than the United States does. The opportunity to take on familiar faces and familiar names you wouldn't otherwise have access to. But now you do.
It's all about perspective, and this can be an opportunity. It all depends on where Jared Anderson's head is at.
If he's got his head on straight.
We knew this was coming, and now it's here.